Okay, guys, so today is my testimonial video. So first start off with my name is Brittney Paulk, and I have a husband, Derek Paulk, and my two children, Carter and Ava. Um, so growing up in childhood, I didn't know about God. I wasn't really raised in God in our home. I know that my aunt tried to drag us to church every chance she got, and remember going to church camp when I was younger. But we lived with mom and dad, and I have a sister, a little older sister. She's about 18 months older than me, so it was just me and her, mom and dad. We lived in like a middle class. I really didn't know any different in my home until I got a little bit older, that my parents and the lifestyle was drugs. They had smoked pot, sold pot, the lifestyle that comes along with it. And I remember in middle school, the dare officer, they have these things where they'd show you what drugs look like. And I remember my dad telling me, like, you can't tell them that this is what we do, because your dad will go to jail. I remember our house getting raided when I was younger, and, several other things that come along with it. Eventually, I knew that there was more than just marijuana in our home, because they would do marijuana around us, but the other drugs they did not. So eventually I kind of caught on to that, and especially when mom and dad would get in a fight, then things came out and were said amongst them, of the heavier drugs that they were doing. Eventually, it got to the point where we were no longer middle class. We lost a lot, lost our home. Remember living with my Nana, having to stay with her, and things were just getting bad. I feel like my dad checked out long before they ever separated when I was 12. And so did mom, Well, I ended up going with my mom when I was 12. They separated. I went with my mom, and we lived in and out people's couches and on their floors, and was introduced to a whole nother lifestyle, and kind of more understanding of the lifestyle of drugs. So that's when I started getting into smoking pot, taking pills at, I was about 12 or 13. And then it was, just on the weekends. But of course, it gradually moved into during the weekdays. I dropped out. My mom signed me out in ninth grade, like my first month of ninth grade. So then it turned into just partying all the time. It was for fun. It was what everybody around me was doing. Eventually, I had to move with my dad. When I was about 17, my dad and his wife now, I had to move with them when I was about 17 after our house got raided. They had 2 meth labs in the house, one in the shed, one in the house. Our house got raided. My mom went to jail, and I had to move with my dad, which was a big adjustment for me for not being with him for 5 years. But it was good. It was a blessing, is what I needed. I ended up going back and getting my GED. But of course, I still went back and hung out with my friends. And that's where I met Derek, was hanging out with my friends. My husband, Derek, he came and sold drugs at the house that I was at. And we knew each other from, the neighborhood. Even though he was a little bit older than me. But one night we went to a party. He was our designated drunk driver, drove us to the store, and he had winked at me through the mirror, and I was like, is he winking at me? And I was 18 at the time. I just turned 18. Anyway, we ended up hanging out that night, and really hasn't separated since. We ended up getting really pregnant early on with Carter, our son. He's now 15, which was hard. I was devastated at 18 that I was pregnant. I really had a lot of thoughts for my future. I had a lot of, even though being in drugs, I just really wanted to do something with my life. But I ended up getting pregnant, and Derek was very excited. And I chose to keep Carter, which I'm very glad I did. But at this time, it was getting heavier into drugs and heavier into drugs. I couldn't stop smoking pot when I was even pregnant with him. So after we had him, we lived in Florida, and it was a lot of the pill mill and the shopping, doctor shopping and things. So that's what we did. It was a lifestyle that we lived for so long. Always on the road, always in the car, always at doctor's offices, getting any kind and every kind of prescriptions that we had. By this point, I was completely addicted to pain pills, any kind of pain pills. So, we lived that life for so long. Carter, we lived with my dad most of the time. We really didn't have a stable home like me and Derek ourselves for Carter. So we stayed with my dad and my stepmom for a long time. A lot of times I was messed up. They raised Carter most of the first 5 years of his life. After that, some of our family, his family, Derek's family, had moved to Tennessee. So we thought, well, we're going to move from the lifestyle down here. We want to move away from the drugs. So we ended up moving up here to Tennessee, where we got pregnant with Ava, and had Ava very early on, and being like the first year that I was up here. But, coming up here, we did not get away from drugs. We just got into more drugs and harder drugs and deeper drugs. I have tried heroin before, and I had tried meth before this, but it was never like it was when we came up here. So we got deeper into that after having Ava. And where I was in life, I was completely distraught that I didn't do anything with my life. I was completely depressed that I didn't do anything with my life, and that I was an addict. So I think that just took me deeper down a hole, into just, this is the way I'm gonna live. This is it. Like, I'm gonna be an addict, and this is how it's gonna be. So really the turning point for us, I believe, was when I had overdosed at home, and Derek gave me CPR we lived in Parrottsville at the time, so the ambulance took a long time to get there. But he gave me CPR. As they came to the house, they brought me back. I don't remember much, but coming back and wondering why the ambulance was in my kitchen at the time. But I do remember from that night, I remember refusing treatment in the ambulance. They let me out, and as I'm walking up the driveway, Carter was holding Ava, and they were just devastated. Ava had found me. She had found me on the floor, and then, had told Derek. But walking up that driveway, I seen my two kids that were devastated, and I was so messed up in life at that time that it didn't even faze me that they were devastated about almost losing their mom. So 4 days later, DCS come to our home, which was a trailer in Parrottsville, a camper trailer. And they came to our home, and I was pretty honest with the people and told them, like, I'm going to fail this drug test, and I'm going to fail it for a lot, because at this point I was doing anything and everything. It's So eventually we had the kids took from us, and they were given to a family of friends that was able to have them. And so Derek's stepmom had heard about a place called Empower. We went to court and everything. We had to do all these things for DCS, get a transportation, get a job, do parenting classes, all these other classes, everything you have to do for DCS. So we started to do parenting classes at Empower. And that's where we met some people from the church, Crossroads Community Church in Newport. And I remember Josh saying to me, if you let us help you and let us show you Jesus, you will get through this. And I was like, listen, I don't know about y'all's Jesus, but I know that I don't want to live this way no more. I know that I'm tired of living this way. So they tried to do help us. They were great, and they tried to give us opportunities to volunteer. Really came alongside of us in our mess. Eventually, though, we were checking all the boxes for DCS. We were passing the drug test, not by the right way. We had, Crossroads had helped us to get a place. We had a vehicle, and, checking all these boxes. We took our parenting classes, took other classes we were supposed to. By this time, Harley and Christy, they were, Harley was a youth pastor at Crossroads, had Carter and Ava. And conviction came on me after they had told me that we're going to start taking hair follicles from you. And I looked at Derek at that moment, and I knew, it was done. We tried to cheat the system. And now I know, with God, anything that is in the darkness will come to light, and he'll bring it to light. So at this time, 3 days later, we're messed up. I was devastated. I was like, I'm going to lose my kids. I'm just going to lose it. I'm going to be somebody that never has my kids ever again. Somebody else is going to raise my kids. And, at that point, I not that I accepted that reality, but it was like I had these two choices. I had these two roads. Which one was I going to take? And I remember being in the back of Empower in my truck, sitting there in my truck. I was very mad at Empower because they were trying to help us and we were trying to be respectful, but they wanted me to go stay with this lady, this older woman that I barely knew, which she's a blessing to my life. But at the time I was devastated, but I remember seeing my reflection in the radio, and I seen an old woman, and it was me as an old woman without my children and still an addict. And I was like, God, I don't want to be this way. I don't want to do this. If you are real and they say all this about you and you give joy and you forgiving people and you do all this, then show me, show me. So, after I had confessed to Christy and Harley, I had confessed to Christy that we are still getting messed up. We are still getting high. They had our children, so it was conviction came on me it was heavy. We're not doing the right thing. So, we were high one night, and Derek was praying. It was about a couple days after I had told Christy, and he says, "I know what we have to do." And I was like, oh, God, I've been hearing this for 12 years. You know what we have to do. You've been taking care of us. You've been doing this. We've been doing this. I mean, it's a lot. What do you mean? You know what we have to do. He says, I have to go farm. So farm to us was, Pete Higgs at Renovatus. We had known about him from Harley because Derek was supposed to go out there and serve, but we ended up getting high instead of going out there and volunteering. So he knew about this program from Harley, but I woke up a few days later and he was in our kitchen filling out an application for rehab. And I was devastated. When this first happened with our children, I just immediately said, I want to leave everything behind and I want to go to rehab. But we tried to work it out, And I ended up not going to rehab. But, you know, I understand now it was all in God's timing and what needed to happen for our story, for God's glory in it, and understanding all of it now. But so Harley was there filling out the application with Derek. And I was devastated. I was like, you can go to rehab all you want to. I'll stay here. I'll just keep it together. I'll get a job. I'll pay for the rent. I'll stay here. But Harley says, you need to go to rehab too. And I was like, I'm not going to a year-long rehab. You know, I was mad at him, even though he had my children. And Harley had been through some of the similar things in life, addiction. And I was like, finally, I was like, you know, well, will you let me come back and fight for my children? You know, and he said, absolutely. So we, a few days later, said goodbye in a Walmart parking lot. The night before, we had went and go see our kids at Harley and Christie's. We cried, we prayed. And we left to rehab. But it was the best decision we could have ever made. In rehab, I went to it's a very structured, faith-based program where I started to learn about God, and also myself. You know, I started to learn what I actually really did like sober. I actually gained friends that wanted to be my friends for me and not what I had or what we could do for each other. I learned a lot. You know, I just surrendered it all to God. It was like learning what that even meant, you know, learning what Jesus died on the cross for. You know, learning that I was free in Him, you know, that I can be set free from addiction, that I can be forgiven, and that all of the things of my past did not define who I was in God. And I got baptized pretty early on in the program. I got baptized, and it was beautiful. It was washing me clean, and really stepping into living sober and living for Jesus. Harley and Christy would bring the kids out as much as they could, and it was awesome. They were such a blessing in all of this. You wouldn't be able to take one person out of all the hands of people of our story. It was just beautiful now looking back of how God orchestrated people all together for us. And after the program, so Derek went to his program, I went to my program. After about 10 months, we were able to move into our home. God had blessed us with a home, a beautiful home. And also with somebody had kept our dog for us. We had a dog at the time when we went into rehab. She kept her for a whole year. We now have our children back. We now have a home together. And we are starting up Rural Path Ministries. I believe in the cross. I believe in Jesus, and I believe in His redeeming hand because it happened in my life. He took me and turned my life around. He turned my heart around. It's unexplainable, the joy that I have now. Giving back to other people and helping other people, and serving in His church. gives my heart so much joy, more than drugs ever did. And now it's not just for me and Derek, but it's for my children. My children now praise God. Ava, she is 6, and she worships God with her whole heart. And it's changing generations to come, not only for my children, but their children, and teaching them that there is a Lord Savior who died for us and for our sins, and to live the way, the only way to live in life. It's beautiful. It's truly beautiful. So that is my testimony. It is my story. But y'all have heard the song, right? My story and your glory it's my story, but it is God's glory to him for his redeeming hand. And I just gotta say, like, if you are stuck in a place where you don't think that you can get out, you can with him. If you are stuck in addiction and think that that's the way you're gonna die, you don't have to. God can pull you out. And he could set you on a path that is beyond anything you could ever dream of. It's beyond anything you could ever imagine for yourself or your family. God has given us a beautiful family in the church and surrounded us with godly people. It's amazing. I'm no longer an orphan. I'm his child. I'm God's child. So, and I also got to say, reach out. Like, reach out to somebody. Talk to somebody. If we didn't reach out and take that step and gave up, we wouldn't be where we are. So, don't give up. Reach out. And the only way is through God. The only truth is God. So, thank you all. And we will be back next week with Audrey's testimony. So, yep.